Imagine a home filled with peace, a father whose love never fails, and two sons who share in his wealth. From the outside, it seems nothing could shatter this harmony. But hidden beneath the calm is a restless heart, a brewing storm, a decision that will break the family apart. One request will pierce a father's soul. One journey will lead a son from riches to rags. One return will shake an entire household. This is not just a tale of wandering, it is a battle between pride and humility, despair and mercy, death and life. What happens when love is tested, when freedom is abused, and when the lost dare to come home? Welcome back. Please subscribe, like and share. Now let's dive into the story. There was once a wealthy man, honored in his village, whose household shimmered with prosperity and respect. He had two sons, each born into the comforts of abundance, yet their hearts beat with very different rhythms. The elder son was steady, thoughtful, and mindful of the household's honor. The younger son, however, felt confined by the quiet rhythms of the family estate. A restlessness lingered in his gaze, a hunger for experiences that stretched beyond the borders of the familiar fields, the stone-paved courtyard, and the loyal servants who had grown with him. One sun-drenched afternoon, when the olive trees cast long shadows across the estate, the younger son approached his father. The request he would voice would pierce the calm of their daily lives like a sudden storm. "Father," he said, his voice trembling with both excitement and defiance, "give me my share of the inheritance now, while you are still alive." The words fell like stones into a still pond, stirring ripples of shock. In the traditions of their land, such a demand was not just bold, it was dishonoring. To ask for one's inheritance before a father's passing was considered a rupture of respect, a fracture. The father's heart aches, yet with quiet dignity, he grants the request. He divides his estate, placing wealth into the hands of the eager, untested son. And without delay, the younger gathers his belongings, his silver, his dreams, and with pride in his step, he departs. The family watches as he walks away from the gates of the estate, his figure shrinking against the horizon. Behind him stands the older brother, silent, his arms crossed in disapproval. And behind them both, the father, eyes lingering, heart heavy, yet full of love that never fades. The younger son journeyed far, leaving behind the quiet fields of his father's house for the noise and glitter of a distant city. The streets dazzled him with sights he had only dreamed of, markets alive with color, taverns echoing with music, voices offering him pleasures for a price. And he had the silver to buy it all. With open hands, he spent freely. Nights turned into banquets, friends gathered around him like moths to flame. They drank to his generosity, laughed at his jokes, and celebrated his wealth. His purse became their feast, and his name spread among them as a man of splendor. But splendor without wisdom is a shadow. His days blurred into nights of revelry, coins spilling from his hands faster than they could be counted. What once was inheritance now trickled away like water through open fingers. The more he spent, the emptier he became. The city, once alive with promise, began to change. The tables grew quieter, the laughter faded, and the friends who once cheered his name drifted into the darkness when the coins ran dry. Soon, his wealth was gone. And with it, the false joy that had filled his days. But the son had yet to face the harshest blow. For beyond the hollow silence of his empty purse, a famine swept the land, a famine that cared nothing for his dreams, his pride, or his need. Hunger began to gnaw at his body, despair at his soul. And the boy who once walked with pride now wandered the streets with trembling steps, searching for bread that was nowhere to be found. The sun blazed mercilessly upon the land, yet no warmth touched the younger son's heart. His silver was gone, his robes torn, his sandals worn thin. Where once his name had been spoken in admiration, now it was forgotten, or worse, mocked. The friends who had danced at his table vanished like mist, leaving only shadows of laughter that haunted him in his loneliness. He walked the streets of the foreign city with hollow eyes, his stomach clawing with hunger. Each step was heavy, each breath a weight. He searched the markets, but the famine had drained them of food. The stalls were bare, the wells dry, and the faces around him twisted with the same desperation he felt. There was no mercy for a stranger with empty hands. At last, driven by need, he sought work. Yet what task could he find? None would employ a beggar once known for waste. No field welcomed him, no door opened for him. Finally, one man, a foreigner hardened by survival, gave him a task, not out of kindness, but contempt. "Go," he said, "to the fields. Feed the swine." The son's heart sank. For a Jew, pigs were the very picture of uncleanness, a symbol of shame. To serve them was to sink to the lowest depth of dishonor. Yet hunger does not ask for dignity. With trembling hands, he accepted, and soon he found himself among the filth, the stench of swine clinging to his skin. Day after day, he carried their slop, husks, refuse, scraps unfit for men. He poured it before them and watched as they devoured it with satisfaction. His eyes followed the food, his stomach twisting in envy. The creatures before him ate better than he did. At times, he knelt beside them, staring into the trough, his lips whispering the thought he could no longer hide, "If only I could fill my belly with what they eat." But no one gave him anything. Nights brought no relief. He lay in the dirt, wrapped in rags, the sky his only roof. He thought of the distant home he had abandoned, the warm bread of his father's table, the laughter of servants who never knew hunger, the calm strength of his father's hand. Even the lowest worker in that house lived in dignity. But here he was, the son who had once demanded wealth, now a beggar in rags, despised even by strangers. Shame crushed him. His pride, once a blazing fire, had burned down to ash. He saw himself as he truly was, broken, lost, unworthy of the name he carried. And there, in the silence of his ruin, a thought rose within him like a flicker of light in the darkness. "I will arise. I will go to my father." His lips formed the words of repentance, whispering them again and again, as though rehearsing for the moment he would stand before the man he had wounded. "Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants." The words trembled on his lips, a mixture of fear and hope. He knew the weight of his shame, but he also remembered the mercy in his father's eyes. Perhaps, just perhaps, there was still a place for him, not as a son, but as a servant. At dawn, with legs weak but heart resolved, he rose from the filth. The swine grunted as he turned away, leaving behind the troughs that had nearly become his own. His steps were unsteady, yet with each one, the thought pressed stronger into his soul. "I will return. I will return." The road was long, and every mile a reminder of his fall. His clothes marked him as a beggar, his smell betrayed his shame, and his face bore the lines of hunger. Yet with each faltering step, he moved closer, not just to his father's house, but to the mercy that waited unseen beyond the horizon. The morning sun stretched across the horizon as the younger son limped along the dusty road. His body was weak, his clothes stained with shame, but his heart carried a flicker of hope. With every weary step, he whispered the words he had rehearsed. "Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son." The road seemed endless, and doubt gnawed at his soul. What if his father turned him away? What if his older brother mocked him? What if the servants scorned him as nothing more than a thief who had wasted the inheritance? Yet hunger pressed him forward, and desperation fueled his courage. He had nothing left to lose. Far away, beyond the fields, the father stood. Each day, he had gazed toward the horizon, waiting, hoping, longing. Though many told him it was foolish to expect the boy's return, his heart refused to stop waiting. Love had trained his eyes to look beyond disappointment, beyond silence, beyond time. And then, on this very day, he saw a figure in the distance. Small, bent, limping, wrapped in rags. At first, it was only a shadow, but love recognized what eyes could barely see. The father's heart leapt. He knew that gait. He knew that frame. Though broken and far off, that was his son. Without a moment's hesitation, the father ran. His robes flew behind him, his feet pounded the earth, and the servants gasped in shock. For no elder, no master of a great household, would ever run in public. It was considered undignified. But love does not measure dignity. Love moves. The son lifted his weary eyes and froze. He had not expected this. He had expected distance, silence, judgment. But here was his father, rushing toward him with tears streaming down his face. Before he could speak, arms wrapped around him, arms strong with mercy, trembling with relief. The father embraced him, drawing him close despite the filth and stench that clung to him. He kissed him again and again, as though to erase the distance of every mile the boy had wandered. The son's voice broke through his sobs. "Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son." But the father would not let him finish. Mercy interrupted shame. Compassion silenced confession. Turning to the servants who had followed, the father cried out, "Bring the best robe and put it on him. Place a ring on his hand and sandals on his feet. Kill the fatted calf and prepare a feast, for my son who was dead is alive again. He was lost, and now is found." The courtyard erupted with movement. Servants rushed to obey, joy filling their steps. The best robe was draped over the boy's shoulders, covering the rags of his ruin. A ring, the symbol of family authority, was slipped onto his finger, restoring his identity. Sandals were placed on his blistered feet, declaring him no longer a beggar, but a son. The smell of roasting meat filled the air as the fatted calf was prepared. Music rose from the house, drums beating, flutes playing, voices singing with gladness. The estate, once heavy with waiting, now trembled with celebration. And at the center of it all stood the father, his face shining with joy, his arms still resting on the shoulders of the son who had returned. The younger son wept, overwhelmed by a love he had not earned and a forgiveness he could not deserve. His shame melted in the warmth of his father's embrace. He had expected to beg for bread, but instead, he was restored as a child of the house. The far country was behind him. The father's house was his again. Yet not all hearts shared in the joy. For even as the music played and the feast began, another figure stirred, one who had never left, but whose heart had never truly been at home. The music swelled through the estate, laughter echoing as servants hurried to set the banquet table. Torches flickered in the courtyard, and the aroma of the roasted calf filled the night air. Joy pulsed through every corner of the house. In the field, the older son worked as he always had. His hands were calloused from years of labor, his brow heavy with sweat. As he drew near the house, the sound of music drifted to him. He stopped, startled. This was no ordinary evening. There was a feast, a celebration, but for what? Confused, he called to a servant. "What is happening?" The servant's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Your brother has returned. Your father has killed the fatted calf. He is safe, he is alive, and tonight we rejoice." The words struck like a hammer. Your brother. The very one who had shamed their family, squandered the inheritance, and abandoned his duty. He, the prodigal, was honored with a feast, while he, the faithful one, had toiled for years without reward. Anger boiled within him. His fists clenched, his jaw tightened. The music that brought joy to others stung his ears like mockery. He refused to enter. Word reached the father, and once again, the man of mercy did what few would expect. Just as he had run to the younger son, so now he came out to the older. With gentle eyes, he pleaded, "Come, my son. Join the celebration." But bitterness poured from the older brother's heart. "Look, all these years I have served you, never disobeyed your command, yet you never gave me even a young goat to celebrate with my friends. But this son of yours, who wasted your wealth with harlots, comes home and you kill the fatted calf for him." Yet the father did not answer with rebuke. He placed a hand on the older son's shoulder, his voice steady, tender, firm. "My son, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But it is right that we celebrate and be glad, for your brother was dead and is alive again, he was lost and is found." The words pierced the silence, echoing like a truth deeper than human fairness. For in the Father's house, love was not earned, but given. Mercy was not measured, but poured out. Grace was greater than pride, greater than shame, greater than the gulf between brothers. For we, too, are the prodigal, wandering into far countries of sin and pride. And we, too, are the elder brother, tempted to withhold mercy from those who return broken. Yet above all, we are called to see the Father, running, embracing, restoring, pleading. This is the heart of God. A love that watches for the lost. A mercy that runs to meet us. A forgiveness that clothes us with honor when we deserve only shame. The younger son found it in his ruin. The elder son wrestled with it in his pride. The prodigal son found mercy when he returned, and the elder brother was invited to share in it, but both lessons are ours to carry. Mercy does not wait for perfection. Forgiveness is not earned. Love is not measured by deeds, but by its willingness to embrace the lost, restore the broken, and celebrate life renewed. And so, the story calls to us. Step into the feast. Forgive. Return. Receive mercy. And above all, let your heart reflect the Father's heart, a heart that runs toward the lost, rejoices at their return, and never ceases to love. For in this story, in its hope and its challenge, we find a truth that cannot be ignored. No one is beyond redemption, and no love is greater than the one that waits to welcome us home. Thank you for watching. If you were blessed, please subscribe, like and share. See you in my next video.